You got me feeling kinda crazy. You got me feeling like my head is spinning round. The way you look is so amazing, amazing. I could stare into your eyes for hours and hours. Everything is kinda hazy. We're just dancing in the dark in the flashing lights. I know you can't hear what I'm saying, so I'm just gonna hold you closer. You take me higher when we're together. It feels like you set my whole world on fire. I know I want you, I know I need you here. For hours and hours. You're on me, I want tonight. You know you make me feel so alive. I wanna stay with you, never say goodbye. It's like we're in paradise, like we're in paradise. You're on me, I want tonight. You know you make me feel so alive. I wanna stay with you, never say goodbye. It's like we're in paradise, like we're in paradise. Yeah. You know you make me feel so alive. I wanna stay with you, never say goodbye. It's like we're in paradise, I don't know how you do it to me, but you make me wanna fly. I'm not coming down. Maybe it's the way you move, babe, move, babe. You've got that body and that smile, make my head spin round. I'll hold you close to me. You're all I want, so stay right here with me. This feels like paradise. You take me higher when we're together. It feels like you set my whole world on fire. I know I want you, I know I need you here. You're on me, I want tonight. You know you make me feel so alive. I wanna stay with you, never say goodbye. It's like we're in paradise, like we're in paradise. You're on me, I want tonight. You know you make me feel so alive. I wanna stay with you, never say goodbye. It's like we're in paradise, like we're in paradise. Yeah.
Well, here we are. Welcome, everyone. Just put that lovely video on while I was having a coffee. I'm running a fraction late this morning. I've spilled my coffee on my cup. That looks disgusting. Must clean that off. So how is everyone? Back for a usual show. I'm having a Milo today. My son's cup is there. So cheers, or I should say cheers. Nice. So how is everyone? Sherry said, like the intro song. Yeah, I'm going to just start doing that each week while I'm grabbing everything in, everything organised. I mean, I have so many videos. I think I've posted 1,000 now that, you know, I'm going to start posting some again so we can all have a look at them. I mean, I do classify it as art and I love to show it off again. Like sometimes you put them on YouTube and you never sort of look at them again. So I thought I'd start posting them again at the beginning of the show while I'm getting everything organised. So let's see who's here in the chat. Let me just make this the right size. I think it is actually. I can just move that over. All right, let me put that there. Let me just close that. All right, so Roscoe's here. What's he saying? Sitting on pins and needles waiting for my favourite Aussie. She is finally getting out and about in Florida, but still playing it safe. Yeah, we're just about starting to come out of lockdown here now, which is really good. Started a couple of days ago, I think. So we've got very few cases now, which is great. So I hope everyone else is the same. Lowell says, hopefully YouTube is fixed in 25 minutes. Was there a problem with YouTube, was there? Torben said, David, stubby posse Aussie Oastler. I bet you can't say that after a couple of Coronas. James said, hello all, David. Was that title supposed to be A7? Oh, did I mess up the title again? Oh, I'll fix it later. It was meant to say A7 IV, yeah, not A7R. Did I put R4, did I? Oh, yeah, I did. Oh, boy, it's early in the morning. I'll have to fix it straight after. Everyone will be going, ooh. So I'll fix that later on. What else have we got? Photo Meox here. Julian is also here. Photo Meox said, I'll miss the show today because I'm shooting content for my wife. Well, have fun, Ike. Oops. Where were we? Torben said, hey, that's the best reason to miss a show. Hope to see you later then. George said, flip out screen. I know, that's going to be pretty amazing. What else? Jim's in here as well. So g'day, Jim. And just enjoying the warm weather. Yeah, we're starting to go into our winter here. Sizzle Man said, nice and warm in Greensboro. Might be heading back your way, Jim, in June. Chris is saying, hello, David. Beautiful day in Los Angeles, still at home. Good Bud Lime Day. Woohoo. What else? Nice day for fun. What's Julian said? Nice warm weather. Good fights for the Rona. Good fights? What does that mean? Gerald's here as well. G'day, Gerald. Torben mixing an album, but shut down for the day. And we'll catch David here before going to bed. What else? Sizzleman's in here as well. Sean is here as well. Michigan checking in. So nice to see you here, Sean. Hogarth is also here. What else? Carol's here as well. G'day, Carol. Good to see you here. Leslie's here. Oreo is here. I just made Oreo moderator because he said he wasn't. I made him one. He is in our photography videography school, so he's a mod now. I did make you one, didn't I? Yep. What else? Cherry's here. Cherry and Trevor said g'day. Ben's here as well. G'day, Ben. How you going? We'll have to catch up for a coffee again soon once the coffee shops open up. And that's about it, I think. Greg's also here as well. Greg Thomas. Yeah, it wasn't a promo, Greg. That was just a video I shot a while ago. They're Kiara's video. Like I said, I've got so many videos that I'm going to share because some of you may not have seen them, and I just thought I'd play them at the beginning so we could all have a look at that. So we've got a bit to show today. A lot of stories to go through. Let me just refresh this as well. Just want to refresh the YouTube page. All right, so let's get stuck into the show. So let me put show start is 8 o'clock. 8, I mean, not 8 o'clock. I need a Corona.
If you're looking for some crazy, I'll tell you everybody's standing in a line for the water slide. You can come on over. We can take the roller coaster. And you know everybody's looking for a ride in the water slide. Water slide. Surfing on a wave of good feelings.
Well, welcome everyone. Back for our normal show. I just saw Casper's come in as well. Manny Autos, g'day, Manny is in here as well. So we've got a few stories that we're going to talk about today. I wanted to talk about, first of all, a Sony camera that is well, we think it's going to be announced, but it looks like we're going to have an articulating screen. So let me just put in the time we're starting, which is 9:15. So this is really interesting. So Sony have, well, we believe Sony Rumours are saying there's going to be a new camera. It's sort of like an RX100, but let me show you the look of it, which is this. This is what they're saying it's going to be. And it looks like for the first time, Sony are going to bring out a camera that has an articulating screen. Now, this I know they've done it with the A-series cameras, but I'm talking about the sort of later cameras like the RX100s, the A7 series, etc. So this looks like it may be the first one that has this articulating screen. Now, there was also a leaked image here that you can see in this one where they're showing it again with the articulating screen coming out. So it's showing a bigger grip. It's showing the articulating screen on this side and quite a large area at the top. I'm not sure if that is... Yeah, I think that's actually just one of these, so I don't know why that was put up there. Perhaps it was being tested with that or something, but obviously it has an area you can attach up the top for your microphones and stuff like that, or wireless mics and things like that as well. But this is really interesting, and I'm wondering too now whether this is going to be available in the a7sIII that comes out. Well, we're hoping it comes out in June, but I'll talk about that in another story a little bit further on. But this may be a change, and it's really interesting. I've said all along that I didn't believe there was anything in any truth at all about Canon having a patent to stop Sony from using a articulating screen. I think it was just a choice that Sony made for some reason, and I don't know why. I did try and look everywhere, and someone sent me one that mentioned something about it, but I really couldn't find anything out there that was saying that it definitely was not allowed, and it was Canon had patented it. And this, if it comes out as it is like that, well, this sort of proves it, I think, because I can't picture Sony paying Canon for that feature. They would have just used the screen that went up like the a6400 did. So this is really quite an interesting development, and like I said, this may be the turning point for them to do this in their larger cameras, which is going to be great. I'm just laughing at Long Rider said just what the world needs is more fucking vloggers. Oh, I love it. But you know, it's interesting. I demand said, is it me or does David look like a little boy from this camera angle? Stop it. The reason why I changed, I'm just lazy this morning. I actually put on I'm doing a review for some small rig stuff, and I needed a wider angle to show the desk. And I just couldn't be bothered to change it. So the angle's exactly the same, but I can just blow it up like that. I can go immediately and make it a bit larger. I'm just laughing at you saying I look like a little boy. Thanks for that comment, I am DeBrown. I love it. But you know, this is interesting. Originally with the a6400, I was a bit against the top folding up screen, but now I love it. I actually really quite like it. But I would still prefer a fully articulating screen like what they're showing here. Now this camera, it says it looks like an RX100. It says it has a fully articulating screen on the side, similar to the Canon EOS RP. And it says it's got a better grip than the current RX100 cameras, very big video record button. It's a 24-70 f1.8 to 2.8 lens. All the autofocus features like IAF and probably animal IF, etc. One-touch bokeh feature. Who knows what that is? I mean, I've got no idea what that is. An auto object detection. So this is a vlogging camera, obviously. So they're going to target this at vloggers. And it looks like this is going to be announced on May the 26th. Which is interesting. It's not one that I'm going to buy. I'm still going to wait and see what happens with the announcements, what we're going to see hopefully in June, which I'll discuss in the next story. But what do you guys feel about this? I mean, are you excited by this camera? I mean, if Sony have finally decided to give us articulating screens, if they've finally decided to up the screen resolution, remember I've talked to you about this before, that the screen resolution on the Sony cameras is only half compared to what the Canon and Nikon cameras are giving us now in mirrorless. So the screen resolutions on the back are really actually quite poor. In fact, the screen is the most dated part of any of the Sony cameras out there. It's really archaic compared to other cameras out there. So I'll be surprised if this hasn't improved on that. And also we're going to start seeing full touch functionality. That's not mentioned anywhere in here, but I would be really surprised if they're going to this sort of length with articulating screens, not updating the screen, and also not giving us full touch functionality. So I'm hoping that this is also going to come out in an A7S Series 2, or all the cameras that are going to be moving on from this stage, which might be the A7 IV, etc. But it's an interesting development. I'll open up the chat after a couple of stories and we'll talk about this, but some are saying they're not excited by it. I'm not really excited by it either, but it certainly is a bit of a difference that we've seen for a change from Sony, and a little bit of innovation. I know this is around for other camera manufacturers, but it's the first time we've seen this on the Sony side since the A series cameras. So what do you think about it? Jerry's just said too he's not interested unless it has 4K 60. There was rumours that this is going to have 4K 60 for 5 minutes. That's what I heard. So it's going to be interesting to see if it does have that. We'll have to wait and see, obviously. But keep your fingers crossed. I just think it's probably... it may help with our cameras that are coming up from this sort of point. So that's really all I wanted to talk about from that perspective. It didn't mention the 4K 60 in here, did it? I'm just seeing if that had anything different in this rumour. No, it was all the same. Oh, it did. It said it had an integrated ND filter, which I think is fantastic. I know when I had the RX 100, I think I had the Mark V, that had the internal ND, and I really missed that. That was a reason why I didn't go for the 6, because I wanted the ND filter in the camera, and that was such had such a benefit when you were shooting video. It was great to be able to not have to carry around an ND filter and just put the electronic ND on. So anyway, it looks like it may have that feature back on. The announcement date is meant to be May the 26th. So stay tuned for that one. All right, so let's go to the next story, which is 1640. Which is this rumour. Apparently on Sony Alpha Rumours, they're saying now that there's not going to be a new A7 IV. Well, not going to be a new A7 IV in June anyway, but definitely another new full-frame E-mount camera. So we don't know what it is yet, but that's what they're saying at this stage. So definitely no A7 IV. I thought the A7 IV would come before the A7S III, really, but... Sony Alpha Rumours are saying that's not the case. Now, whether that's true or not, and it might turn out that it is the A7 IV and not the A7S III, we don't know. But we'll find out, I believe, in July, they're saying. It says down here that I told you that after the ZV1, or ZV1, which however they want to pronounce that, announcement on May the 26th, Sony will have a major announcement in June. We should get at least a new full-frame E-mount camera, but from what I've heard so far, this is not going to be the A7 IV. So chances are good that we'll get the A7S II successor or something else. One thing for sure, we will get new FE lenses. Now, just to sort of explain what they were talking about lenses, I went back to the rumours when they showed what was sort of rumoured to be coming in the lens lineup. We had the Sony 12-24 2.8 GM. Is going to be announced in the summer, so they're saying. Sony are also working on a 1.2 prime. Well, we probably know that's true because that's been discussed a number of times, and Sony management even admitted that they were working on a fast, like a 1.2 prime coming up. You know, that may be an 85, and I think the perfect one for that could be the 85 replacement of the 1.4. I think that may be the first one, or it could be a 50 1.2. But anyway, let's wait and see what happens there. We do have things like Sigma 35 1.2, so we know they're out there, but Sony haven't released anything at this stage. Sony are also working on a new 300mm 2.8 lens, apparently. That would have been announced already, I believe, apart from the Olympics. Have been delayed now until next July, I think it is, or June or July. So there's no hurry now on the 300mm. So that probably has been held back with the virus, and also there's no Olympics. If the Olympics were here, that would have already been announced, and it would already be in use, I'm sure of it, because they would have wanted that to team up with the A9 II. Tamron will also release 3 exciting lenses in 2020. So that's going to be interesting. So what I think we might probably find some really good prime lenses. I'd love to see, like I've talked to you before, like the 35 1.4 lens that I reviewed for Tamron. That's probably one of the sharpest lenses I've ever used. That lens was immaculate. So that could be one that comes out. I'm hoping too they may release something like a wide angle as well, a good wide angle lens. Remember, the other lenses that they released were all 2.8 lenses. So for me personally, they were great if you were trying to get into the marketplace, but because they were cheap. But I would really prefer to say get the 17 to 28, the 28 to 75, and have those lenses covered in the zoom lenses that I've got. And I just didn't really see the need to say get the 20 mil or the 24, etc. So I think Tamron may release something like that. They might release a wide angle lens. Hopefully they'll release something like the 35, and then they may release a longer zoom or something like that as well. Zeiss might launch a mirrorless version of their Optus line. I am going to have an interview with one of the Zeiss ambassadors soon, so stay tuned for that. I want to talk to him about, the Sony lenses that they do and the Zeiss Pop and things like that. So I'll have them on as a guest in a future episode, and also allow a 0.95 lens is coming in 2021. So there you go. Sony did patent 100 1.4, but that seems to have gone dead quiet on that regard. So they're not even mentioning this 100 1.4, but they did patent that. So sooner or later, that lens is probably going to be coming out. I would love to have that in my kit because I love the 135, but the 135 is sometimes too long. So to have a 100 1.4 would be amazing. I have used the 105 Sigma lens, and that was brilliant. So to have 100 that I could use indoors for doing bridal shoots and things like that would be amazing. And obviously a 500 f4 lens for things like sports and also wildlife, etc. Sigma also painted a new 50mm 1.2 FE design as well. So that's the lens announcements. But this is an interesting story because I still don't know whether this is going to happen. I mean, I hope it does, because I'm not in the market to buy one at the moment anyway, because like all you guys, we haven't got work for the next 6 months. But later on, like you all know, I do want a camera that's a better fusion camera, a better video and stills camera. So for me to have 4K 60 or something or higher frame rates is amazing. Now, I know Canon are going to, I think they've delayed the release of the R5 until June or July now, which doesn't surprise me at all due to the virus. I did see I think it was the Everything Man, put a post on Instagram. I noticed it this morning that he said he was disappointed in the price that was announced for the EOS R5 or leaked. The thing was that was Australian, and I checked it and I froze the frame on Instagram because it was just an Instagram story, and it was from an Australian site. And the Australian site had listed the R5 as $6,000. Now, if you bring that down to take into account our just absolutely crapola dollar, it would come around about $3,800. Now, I said it would be between $3,500 and $4,000. I think that's probably about right. That's a pretty good price. I think the Everything Man was talking about that he was disappointed it was $6,000, but it was Australian, it wasn't US. So I still think that camera's going to come in around about $3,500 to $4,000. So later on in the year, I'm going to have to make a judgment about which way I go. I mean, I would generally prefer to stay with Sony because I've got all the lenses and everything that would fit on that. But if the R5 is incredibly good, I may get one just to have in my kit. I mean, I don't know yet at this stage what's going to happen. But hopefully we'll know more in June, because it looks like now that they're going to give an announcement in June. So May the 26th, we're going to get that vlogging camera that we looked at. And then later on, we're going to have in July or June, another camera that is going to be a full frame. Now, I'm just hoping that it's not going to be something like an A5, which was rumoured as well. So let's just hope, that we don't get something that's a low-end version of this. I really am hoping that we get a really good A7S 3 announcement. Now, I'll be happy, and it would keep me in Sony even if they give us 4K 60, because that's really all I need at this stage. I mean, there's 2 ways of looking at this. The R5 is future-proofing your camera. So I know some of you may not agree with what I'm saying there, but the R5 is going to future-proof you in the fact that it will give you 4K 60, 4K 120. You're also going to get the 20 frames per second. We don't know how good that's going to be, of course. It's not going to be an A9, I don't think, but you're still getting the 20 frames per second, and you're also getting 8K if you need that in, say, 4 or 5 years' time. So it will future-proof your camera. So that's one really good thing about that. So I'm not sure. This is why I want to wait before I make a decision. The problem for me is if I go out and buy an R5, well then I'll have to spend $10,000 to get a $6,000 body and then a decent lens or something like that. You know, this is the issue for me. Whereas if I could get, say, an A7S that was decent and at least had 4K 60 that I could use, I could use the current lenses that I've got. So I probably will more than likely stay with Sony unless they don't announce something. I wouldn't mind, like I said to you too, if it's time limited. I mean, I'd be quite happy with that. If Sony gave us a 4K 60 time limited camera, I'd still be happy with that as well. They're still not talking about specs on this, but now that I've seen that other camera, I'm just wondering whether the a7S3 is going to be a different body and that they will have that fold-out, fully articulating screen as a point of difference from their other cameras. And it certainly will have then obviously a better screen, better touch screen, and it's going to be a leapfrog above what we've got already. So that could be something really interesting to look at. I still think they probably should consider going for a bigger body if heat is an issue. So that's something we don't know about. But I do think if they're going to have an articulating screen, they're going to have to change the body anyway, because I think you're going to have trouble accessing the card slots or whatever is on that side. You're going to have trouble accessing those and putting microphones in and things like that. Remember, it defeats the purpose if you bring the screen around and then you can't sort of bend it down a little bit to look up. So it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to give us in that regard. But I think at least there's a bit of excitement there. June's not that far away now. But if they let us down again after this, and I shouldn't say if Sony let us down because this is only a rumour from Sony Alpha Rumours, but you know, if Canon announce the R5 and they release it and Sony haven't released anything or announced anything, there's going to be a lot of people, for videographers particularly, that will switch over. Like I said, I definitely would buy that camera later on in the year if Sony haven't given us any answer at all. The vlogging camera, when we're looking at this one, doesn't interest me at all. I'm quite happy with the a6-400 for what I've got now. I just don't need to go back to more of this vlogging camera. There probably will be a market for this though. Like the young vloggers and bloggers that are out there probably love this type of camera. It's all built in. It's got the ND filter built in. 24-70 I think is a perfect focal length. You know, it's great. So it's going to have some nice features. And I did believe I read somewhere that it was going to be 4K 60 for like 5 minutes, I think, which is ample, really. But the a7S3, we're still only at rumour stage this stage with other announcements of lenses coming up. So let me open up the chat because I'd love to talk to you all about this to see what you all think about it. So let me come back. So Winjip said, "Hi David, haven't watched your show for ages. First time live with you today. Good. Well, congratulations and welcome and for joining us." Manny was here as well. What else? Cherry and said, "Music is always on fire." Iron to Brown. Oh, he's talking about the size of me in that camera. I love it. Jeffrey said, love Manny's videos. Yeah, Manny always does a great job. Long Rider said, just what the world needs is more Fukin vloggers. I love that comment. John said, that looks like an optional EVF, like the Canon. No, but looking at that, to me, and I'll leave these links down below, it may be, see, that looks different. When you're looking at this one here, let me just come back to that page. When you're looking here, that looks like it is attached to the top. So that's interesting. But I noticed when you looked here, That's this. That actually is this, because I can see the thing there and also the road number there and also the thing on the front, which is there. That's that little thing there. So this is the road. It's not, oh, I've got it in the other room. It's actually not the transmitter though, it's the receiver that's on there. So it's a little bit different with the screen on it. So that's the road receiver there that they've got attached. So there must be on the top of this an area that you can attach a microphone or something to, a hot shoe or some sort of system of attaching something. But it looks different here. That's the interesting thing when you're looking at this, that it definitely looks different there. That doesn't look like it's the Rode Wireless Go there. So I'm not sure what's going on. Because when you look here too, there's nothing there at all that shows anything with a an attachment or whatever there. So I don't know what's going on there. That is interesting. John said, fully articulating or just flip out, does it fully rotate? Well, that's the interesting thing. I don't know here, because if you look here too, notice how there's two little bits. I don't know whether we can... How do I do that again? What was the quick key? Oh, it's Control Zoom. Yep, there we go. If you look there, notice how there's two things attaching to... But then again, I think this is only a mock-up. So let me just check on the other page where it was a leaked one. Yeah, you're not getting a side view enough to see it. I would be surprised if this camera was released and it didn't have fully articulating, because I don't really understand the point of view not being able to twist it up a little bit. Like if you're shooting down low and then you just can't shoot up, or if you're shooting high and you can't fold that down, it defeats the purpose to me of having that fully articulating screen. So yes, it's great if Sony have given us that fold out screen to go to the front, but if you can't actually rotate it, I think that's a bit of a bummer. So I hope that's not the case. Remember that what you're looking at on that Sony Alpha one was only I think it's a mock-up, so don't believe that's the case. This is more the real one, but it doesn't show you from the front enough that we can see what's going on. So, yeah. What else have we got? Is the screen like a Fuji? Well, we don't know yet. That's the thing. It's hard to know. Julian said, does it swing out? Well, it looks like it swings out, but we don't know whether it rotates top and bottom, up and down. So that's one thing we've got to find out. Long Rider said, that's it. I'm on the plane to find Casey Conspiracy and smash his head with a real cripple hammer. Like I said, good day, gang. One touch bokeh might be computational photography finally coming to proper cameras, so like the features of the iPhone and Android. Yeah, it could be interesting, but yeah, I mean, the iPhone doesn't do it bad, so it may be the case that they're putting that inside cameras as well, but I'm just not sure why you would need it, because that lens at 2.8 is going to blur the background out anyway. But let me just see, I think I just got a donation from Long Rider. Thank you so much, Long Rider. Oastler, if you go Canon, this gravy train is over. I won't be going Canon. I just might buy one Canon camera. I'm not going to switch, Long Rider. No way would I switch. All right. Greg said, ZX1, not for me. I'm looking at full frame cameras. John said he's not excited either. Greg said, hope a medium format may come one day. It probably will, Greg, because they have got the sensors now. Remember, that's what they're using in the Fuji. Full medium format camera is the Sony sensor. So it may, but Sony may not want to get into that marketplace. So it's hard to know, which way it's going to go. John said Sony has given up. Well, let's hope not, John. Gerald said, I'm not a vlogger, so I have no interest unless it has 4K 60p and a full touch screen. Jim said, if excited about the Sony ZV, click like, thumbs up. If not excited, click like, thumbs up. I love it. Yeah, please, guys, if you can, love a thumbs up. It does make a difference to the channel. Gene said, if David Oastler gets this, the A7S might come out the following week. It probably would, Gene. That'd be just my luck. When I bought the RX100 Mark V, the RX100 Mark VI came out one day later. Like I said, I was going to return it until I found out that the RX6 didn't have the internal ND, and that stopped me from doing it because I love that feature. I think the Canon Cripple Hammer moved to Sony. Oh, God. What else? I'm just glad they are moving to the articulating screen. Well, me too, Julian. I hope they put that in other areas as well. Gives a reason for Canon nerds to stop complaining. Carol said, not really interested. I just got the a6-600 in Feb. Yeah, and that's a great camera, Carol. 8K, 240 frames per second. I love it. I don't think so, but I love it. I hope FAS comes to the next A7 IV. What's FAS? I don't even know what that is. Carol said, yes, enjoy the... oh, no, that's Gerald said that to Carol. Hero said, I bet someone in this chat already knows what's coming. Iron Brown said, the ZV-1 also has the 1.8, 2.8 like the RX100V. Yeah, and that's what I loved because that was my favourite focal length. I wasn't interested in the longer lenses. For me, that camera is more about vlogging and stuff. So I do believe that lens that they're sort of showing there is much better than the longer lens that came out later on. The longer lens may be good for travel, but if you're just vlogging and stuff like that, the 1.8 to 2.8 is a much better lens because you're dealing with lower light stuff, and I believe it's much better. Courtney's also here. G'day, Courtney. What else? Courtney said Brooklyn in the house. Jubilee said they should update their imaging software to be used as a webcam for A series as well. I'm sure that will come as well. I think you'll find probably once they start to get better at that, it's going to get better and better to the imaging edge software will be much, much better. Would love to see a Tamron 150 to 600, Jim said. Yes, some of the Tamron lenses are amazing. The 35, I think it was the 35 to 105. I can't remember the focal length, or 135 I used from Tamron. I reviewed it for Nikon, the Tamron on the Nikon mount. It was amazing. I loved it. It was a really good lens. So they certainly can do some good zooms, that's for sure. Julian said Sigma has the 70 to 200. I ordered the Tamron 7180. Probably going to be heavy though. Yep. So the Sigma will release one. Now I'm sure it's going to be a great lens. Not one I'd buy because I don't want to carry around that weight. It's the reason why I never bought the G Master. I bought the Sony 70 to 200 f4 instead. But like I've told you guys before, that I would be selling my 70 to 200 f4. Shush, Siri. I will be selling my 70 to 200 f4 when things pick up, and I'll be getting the Tamron probably later this year or early next year. By that price too, I think you'll find that the Tamron will drop in price a little bit as well. It seems to happen with most of the lenses that are out there. I adored the Tamron 70 to 180, and that's why I'll be buying that. It's more for Kerry because Kerry is usually the person that will use that when we do weddings and stuff. She's the one that sort of floats around the sides and the edges and sort of snipers away and gets images from a long distance out. And she loves to use the 70 to 200 f4. But when she tried the 70 to 180, she adored it. She loved the weight, she loved the feel, and she certainly loved the quality. She said to me, are we going to get this? And I said, yeah, once we get the money. So she loved it. So I probably will sell the 70 to 200 f4 and get that. But if I can't get enough, because who knows what they're going to be worth, the 70 to 200 f4s. If I can't get enough for that, I'll keep the 70 to 200 f4 as a second lens and just buy the 70 to 180 as the new lens to carry around. I mean, I compared the two of them directly, the f4 version, the Sony against the Tamron. The Tamron was leagues better than what the 70 to 200 f4 was. It was much sharper, much better at autofocus. The only issue is it doesn't have stabilization. I was talking to Oreo about that this morning in the photography videography school. I said, for me, it doesn't matter about that because for stills, it's not an issue. The IBIS is good enough in the camera. If I'm going to use it for video, it will be on a gimbal, and that is not a problem putting that lens on a gimbal because it's reasonably light. Even though it does extend the... when you zoom, it does extend out. It only extends out a little bit, and if you balance the lens on a gimbal and you have it halfway out, a gimbal like the Moza Air 2 it doesn't have an issue working with it either way if you then start to zoom it. So it would work fantastic on a gimbal. The other thing too I love, it's also got the 67mm filter thread, which I use right through the 17 to 28, 28 to 75, and the 70 to 180 as well. So that's one great thing. If you want stabilization and you want a handhold like Oreo does, that then becomes an issue. And then obviously the 70 to 200 f4 would be probably a better prospect for you, because it does have the IBIS, or not IBIS, but it does have lens stabilization built into the lens. So, it is something that you've got to consider if you're looking at that side of things. But I can't wait to get that lens. Jim said, had one with the adapter, sharp but tough to get focused. I'm not sure what that lens was. Julian said, yeah, the review from David and Manny was good. Ida Brown said, seems like that one camera guy did a review on that one as well. Gerald said, you skipped over the line mentioning the Sigma 70 to 200 coming. I just sort of mentioned that a minute ago, Jerry. What's Casper been timed out for? Like said, our dollar crapola is an understatement. I know the dollar here in Australia at the moment sucks. It is really bad. John said 3,800 United States dollars is a little higher than I hoped. But John, that's not expensive for that camera, what it's going to offer. I think if that comes between 3,400 and 4,000 United States dollars, the R5 I'm talking about, I think that is a very reasonable price for that type of camera. You're talking about, as it's spec'd at the moment, it's a leapfrog. It is really a generational leap for anything that's out at the moment. So I don't think that's too expensive. Obviously, if it's too expensive, John, well, then you may have to look at another camera. But I would be predicting it's going to be around that price range. George said, hoping for more Sony goodies, but bracing for a likely letdown. Still very happy with the existing Sony equipment, and go Tamron. I saw the same thing, but it said it was 10,000 AUD. Well, that's interesting, because the one I saw said 6,000 AUD. So if it was 10,000, well, then that would be 6,000 United States dollars. And I don't think it would be that dear, but I still think it'll be around 3.8 to 4. If it was 6, I wouldn't buy it. That's for sure. John said, I'll split the cost with you. You have it even... You have it in the even months and I have it in the odd months. Oh, you're talking about sharing some gear. I wish Canon would open their RF mounts to third parties. Well, there was a rumor I read this morning about Sigma are going to start producing lenses for the RF mount, John. So that is interesting. So I don't know how they're getting around that, because I thought it was patented and they couldn't do it. But I did definitely read a announcement or a rumor this morning saying Sigma were talking about releasing RF mounts. There you go. Also, rumours say Sigma is starting to look at RF mounts as well. Future-proof is an illusion. No one knows what disruptive tech is coming. Hero said they will open up the RF mount when they are satisfied with the profits of their own lenses. Yep. Now, the interesting thing here, though, too, is that what you also have to understand is, and I think Canon not allowing that is stupid. And the reason why I'm saying that is because most money is made from the purchase of lenses. And this is the interesting thing. Now, I suppose, in a way, I suppose what I just said is silly as well, because that stops people buying third-party lenses onto that mount. Yeah, okay, I'll take that back. I can now understand why they did it, because they want you to buy these crazy priced RF lenses that are out there. Nikon would like you to buy the Nikon lenses that are out there. Sony have allowed that to be open, and now I suppose they may have lost that ability to keep those lenses in-house. They've opened it up to Tamron, which are partly owned by Sony anyway, and Sigma, Samyang, everyone else. So yeah, I suppose, I take that back. Guy with the camera said the RX100 has horrific battery life for video. Yeah, well, we don't know what battery is going to be in that, though. If it has got a bigger if it has got a bigger grip, it may be a better battery. So we can just hope that is the case. Where were we? Oh, down here. Roscoe, Sony should use the A99 style body with a flip up and flip down LCD. That would be great, Roscoe. I agree. No way the A7S III comes out with only 60 frames per second. I would be disappointed. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I would be disappointed if it only had 60 frames per second. I would hope it at least goes to 120, and with audio. That's the other thing that would be important to me as well. There's no point bringing it out with 60 frames per second if you can't shoot audio with it, or 120, because if I'm going to shoot 60 frames per second and that's what I'm shooting, if I don't want to slow that down, I want the audio to be with that video. So that's important as well. And 10-bit is mentioned as well. A minimum, I would like to have 60 frames per second, but I'm hoping they do give more than that. But a minimum of it would keep me happy. I wouldn't be thrilled about it, but it would stop me from, say, moving over to buy a Canon camera or something like that, though. So, it's just something that you've got to think about. They have to give us bigger bit depths as well. I mean, that should be just a given. Oh, that's the Rode receiver on the hot shoe. Yes, it is, John. That was definitely that. That other shot is an artist mock-up. Yeah, it was. Is this camera really in demand? Well, Cherry, I don't know. I mean, really, like I've said to you guys, are you all interested in this sort of camera? Do you think there's a marketplace for it? I don't think there is that much of a marketplace for it, but Sony must think there is. I mean, who knows? Oreo said, I'd love the R5 with the 51.2. Yeah, that would be amazing. Torben says, fast, fully articulating screen. Oh, okay, I didn't know what that meant. Acronyms, I love them. Costa's saying, hello. Sony and software go together like water and oil. I love it. Courtney said, great info when you comes on, loving it. Thank you so much, Courtney. Phase 1 also have a Sony sensor. Yep, Sony builds sensors for everyone, basically. Julian says, yes, I love that they kept the 67mm thread. I'll probably just carry a monopod for the extra stability. Yeah, and that's probably all you need, Julian. That's often the way that I work as well. If I'm not using too long a lens, I do hand hold it. It's just I wouldn't want to do it with a 70-200 or a 70-180. It's too long a lens. What else? Scroll down a little bit because I want to keep moving on. Mick said, I read that Tamron will get a firmware. That's the next story, Mick, so I'll go on that as the next story. John said, I agree, 3,800 isn't unreasonable for the R5. I'm hoping for 3,499 or thereabouts, but I'd still consider it for 3,800. I think 4,000 US is even still a reasonable price for that camera, John, at this stage. I really do believe that, seeing with what they're offering. But who knows? It's going to be interesting to see what they say. Casper said, do you still love me? Yeah, I didn't drop you out, Casper. You must have said something naughty. John said, have you noticed a price rise for Sony gear in the AU? Yes, it has, and that's due to the dollar. Everything is going up here in the dollar. It's quite interesting. Even with the virus, things are going up. Like I said, that's because our dollar rate at the moment sucks. Gonzo said the 1DX Mark III is 6,500. Why would the RF version be half the price? Gonzo, because the thing is that's replacing the 5D line, the 5D Mark IV or 3, isn't it? Whatever the latest one of that. I think it's a 5D Mark IV. It's replacing that camera. It's not replacing a 1DX. That's what you've got to understand about that. This is a 5D type camera that they're replacing with that mirrorless camera. It's not aimed in the same market. So that's why they'll replace it at that. You've got to remember too, Canon have not released a mirrorless camera that has dual card slots and has not basically had that cripple hammer thrown at it. So this will be the first one that they're releasing in the mirrorless line that really is a leapfrogging over everything else that they've got. I knew that was going to come because their lenses are just too good and too expensive to justify buying an RF camera. So it was definitely going to come out sooner or later. But everything that I've heard and read about it, they're saying that camera, the R5, is going to replace the 5D Mark IV or whatever that one latest camera is. Gonzo said the 1DX Mark III is... Oh, I read that one already. Mine is also saying, hi. I am DeBrown said, anyone can reverse engineer a lens mount. If Sigma will do it over time, they will get better firmware like they did with the MC11. Yep. What else? And that's about it, because I want to continue on. Just let me check down here, because I'm not sure how much it jumps. Sometimes it jumps right the way down. Yeah, I think that's about it. Jess said, I want a Sony A9 now, but it strikes me that I already have the Sony A9, so I can safely say to my wife that we're dropping Christmas presents this year. Dwayne said, "G'day, Dwayne. How you going? What would it take to make you change? Do you mean to switch cameras, Dwayne? Systems? I wouldn't, unless Canon said to me tomorrow." I'm not going to lie to you. If Canon said to me tomorrow, David, we're going to replace everything for you free of charge. It's not going to cost you a cent. We're going to give you the R5. You can have all the lenses. I would do it. But there's no way I'm going to swap now, because I'm so invested into Sony. I've done it once through Nikon, and I don't want to do that again. So if Sony bring out a camera that's not even up near the R5, but gives me what I need, I won't even buy the Canon. So that's all I'm asking Sony to do, is to give me something that I need, and hopefully that will come in June. Apart from that, there's, the only way I would ever do that is if they offered me everything and I didn't have to shill it. I mean, there's no way if Canon said to me, David, we're going to give you all this gear, but you have to shill it, I wouldn't do it. But if they said, just have it, use it, I'd be an idiot not to take it. But, it certainly wouldn't be I'm going to change over and then be saying Canon's the best, all this sort of stuff. I just don't believe in that sort of stuff. But if they offered everything for nothing, well, then I'd be mad not to take it. But it's not going to happen. But I'm not going to switch. But I may buy the R5 as a camera for video. That could be what I do if Sony don't give me what I need. That's as much as I can answer you, Dwayne. What else? G'day, Aaron. Good to see you in here. And that's about it. I think we're down near the bottom. Okay, so let's go on to the next story, which is these... it should be Sony Sales, actually. Oh, is it Sony Sales? No, it's Tamron Firmware. So I noticed that Tamron have put out a firmware update. Let me just put the time on this so that I can stick it in the description down below. Otherwise, people will be whinging, saying, David, you're not putting the timeline down below. Do you like that? All right, so let's go here. I noticed that Tamron have released or promises a new firmware. It says here that Tamron promises to release a new firmware update for the 17 to 28 and the 70 to 180 FE lenses to fix an issue. Now, it's no big deal unless you have one of the older cameras, because it doesn't affect the a7 III, it doesn't affect the a7R3, it doesn't affect the a7R4, it also doesn't affect it won't affect anything else coming up anyway. So it's only those cameras that are out. So what it does affect is cameras like the A7, the a7 II, A7R, the A7R2, A7S, A7S2, and then the A5000 up to the A6500, and then a few next cameras. And they're saying it's something to do with a malfunction in the image stabilization occurs when used at about 70 to 85 mil focal length, and obviously the same thing happens with the 17 to 35 at different focal lengths as well. When you use flashes, there is a delay from the time the shutter button is pressed to the time the shutter and the flash is released. Oh, thank you so much, Jim, for the donation there. Jim just gave me $10 for a Modelo for you and Kerry. Thumbs up. Thank you so much. Like I said, unless you have one of those older cameras, you're not going to notice this as an issue at all. But like Tamron did last time, they'll release a firmware. They did that when there was a focusing issue with the first version of the 28 to 75. The beauty is that the firmware releases on these can be done in the camera. So it's just like when you're upgrading Sony firmware. It's so easy. You just plug it into your computer, run the update, and it does it. So it's fantastic. So it's not like if you have Sigma lenses and things like that where you have to use docking stations and all these other horrible things that you've got to do. So the firmware will be updated. Like everything, they're honest about it. and they said that they're going to fix it. They will soon fix via a firmware update. So stay tuned for that. But if you have just received the 7E to 180 and you have the 17 to 28 and you have one of the older cameras, just be aware that there may be an issue with the lens, if with stabilization, and also if you're using some flash problems as well. So that's that one. I'm going to keep going because I'm going to talk about Sony Sales 54, 15. So Sony Sales, there's some good and bad news. I don't really think there's really any good news, but let's just have a look. It says here on Sony Alpha Rumours that Sony has, where are we? There's good and bad news in Sony's financial report. Substantial slowdown in demand for the camera. So it is massive. It's 20.198 is the difference for sales. It's gone from being in 2019, 82,449 down to 62,251 in sales. This doesn't compare to the horrible note that Nikon put about the other day. I might talk about that with Aaron on the next week's show, but it's not good. So it just says that Sony reports, Sony released a full 2020 financial report, and Sony reports a 57% drop in fourth quarter profit, January to March 2020. Now, it's going to get worse, I think. It's not going to get any better than that. It's probably going to get way worse. And that's because of the COVID-19 outbreak. And in quarter four, the still and video camera lens sales dropped by 25% to last year. So massive drops in the camera sales. But we all knew this was going to happen. I mean, everyone is suffering a similar way with this. So it's not like there's anything new there that we thought, wow, Sony are doing worse than anyone else. They may be doing a little bit better than others. So I think everyone is suffering. Like I said, there's a report about Nikon putting out an extraordinary loss statement the other day. It says, but there is also some good and bad news. The bad news first. Sales and profit from digital cameras are being significantly impacted by the substantial slowdown in demand around the world. So we knew that was the case. The good news is that China and Thailand, the factories owned by Sony that make digital cameras and smartphones, are currently operating as usual. So in other words, now that they're totally back to normal production now, over the virus, in other words, and now they're up to full production. So they've got over that side of things. But the sales just aren't going to be there, and I don't think they're going to be there for the foreseeable future. And this is going to be the interesting thing, how camera manufacturers are going to get out of this. I did just sort of discuss with Aaron in the photography videography show that a lot of shops, particularly, hardware, like, we walk into the shop, retail type shops are going to really struggle in the coming months. And a lot of them may close down. That's one of the horrible things about it. We're seeing that happen in Australia here, not the camera shops shutting, but we're seeing a sort of big upsurge in online sales because people couldn't go out and then they were ordering online. And I think people have realised how easy it is and it's a good system, and they're buying that way now rather than going to a retail brick and mortar type store. So this could be the sort of future that might be there, and it's horrible because I do like going into camera stores. But, it's tough. I mean, B&H, I think, just announced the other day that they were putting off a number of workers, furloughing them or whatever that means, that I suppose just put off temporarily why they're in lockdown and people can't go in there. Remember, we're looking at I know here in Australia they're talking about a timeline of 6 months before they think things may get back to some normality with work. We are out of lockdown now as stage one, and then in 3 weeks we'll probably go and get more freedom and more freedom and more freedom over the coming months. But, it's if they're talking about recessions or even depression coming in, how long is it going to be before people have got that sort of money to spend on high-end items, like these cameras we were talking about before of, $3,000 to $4,000 for a Canon camera? A lot of us may turn around and say, well, for the next 12 months, I might use what I've got and stick with it to see what happens, and this is the interesting thing that people are going to have to make a judgment call on. I certainly wouldn't like to be in a business where I had brick and mortar. Like, I'm lucky my studio is in my house. I mean, it's not in my house. I built it separately. But this is all mine. So I don't have to pay anything for this. So it's all mine. All I have to pay really is electricity and heating. You know, I mean, that's really all it is. Everything else is covered. So I'm a lot more protected, I suppose, in that regard, because I don't have that. But if I'd rented a studio like Gilbert had, and in the UK, and anyone else that has that sort of thing, well, then if work goes down and you're not getting, you're not getting work, well, then that becomes really horrible. You know, like it's awful if that's the case. And shops are exactly the same. I mean, here in Australia now at the moment, I noticed that we're getting things where they're saying, I think it was a camping store the other day, so it was selling like camping gear, outdoor camping gear and stuff like that. Well, they had around 50 shops, I think, and they said they were going to sell or close down, I think it was 3/4 of them, and then they were just going to serve that online and then just keep a few marquee stores open. And that may be the way that other camera stores and things go due to this, sort of going on. So who knows what's going to happen with camera sales. So I'm not surprised about the camera sales at all. I think it probably fits in with what everyone else is sort of going through at the moment. Let's just hope that once we get as much in control of what's going on, like I know the US at the moment is particularly vulnerable. If we can get this all under control and get back to work, and start earning a living again, well, then hopefully things may not be as bad as what they could be. So, who knows what the answer is. So it's certainly going to be interesting to see in that regard. So I'm not surprised at Sony's figures at all. And the last story before I open up the chat, now, what are we on? 0050. The last story is just this, Sony Pro support. This is great news from Sony, looking after their customers. Sony Pro support extended by 6 months for customers due to global conditions. Now, I'm not sure whether that's everyone in Europe and elsewhere, or whether this is just in the US. They're saying down here that US members and Canada members. So hopefully this is also coming out to the European viewers as well. They're just saying that Pro Support member, you are amongst our most loyal customers, and we want you to know how much we value being part of the Sony imaging family. With the current global situation, we are taking steps to ensure we are supporting all of our customers during these difficult times. For all Pro Support members like yourself, we are automatically extending your membership for an additional 6 months free of charge, which is fantastic. So good on Sony for doing that. It was interesting because here in Australia, we got 12 months. So they seem to be differing all around the world, and we got 12 months free. I got that message the other day. So, that was fantastic. I got that, and I was wrapped because that saved me $100. So it was fantastic that came out, and I now don't have to worry about that for the foreseeable future. So that's also great. So thank you, Sony, for doing that. Thank you for looking after the US and Canadian members. Hopefully you've done the same thing with the European members as well. So let's open up to Q&A. Let me just delete that. Delete. All right, so Q&A is 102. Where are we? 30, 40, I'll put. All right, so let's go to Q&A, have a little chat. Where were we? I think I was down. No, it wasn't that far. Where was Jim's donation? Jim's donation was there. All right, let me come down here. Oh, Dwayne also gave 99 as well. Thank you so much, Dwayne. I missed that. Have a cold one, please, on me. Thank you for everything. Thank you so much, Dwayne. Leslie said, I think Sony will introduce an a7R3. I think they have been working on their heat problem for so long. There already is an a7R3. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Leslie. So, what else? The Thai tourist said, I agree, David. The price is $3,500 to $3,999 range. Anything else would limit sales. Yep, like I said, even that is going to be a struggle for a lot of people. We're talking about the R5 there, by the way, but even that is going to be a struggle if you're dealing with that too. What else? Nothing like having a firmware needed when the lens is even shipped. Yeah, I know, but at least they've been honest about it, I suppose, that Tamron have been honest and they haven't tried to cover it up or anything like that, so they are honest. Thanks so much for the donation, Dwayne and Jim. But remember too that if it's only going to affect you if you have those older cameras. So that's something you've just got to think about. If you don't have an a7 III or one of those other ones, you don't have to worry. CC said, hello, David. I think there's something new from Sony this year, and it's big enough, new sensor capabilities, and I guess new models. AI on the edge. Yeah, remember, AI is the future. I'm still waiting, and I think this is definitely the future with the Sony sensors. I noticed there was an announcement on Sony Alpha Rumours this morning talking about new sensors that were going to be released, but they were talking about it being for industrial things. Well, just imagine when we start to get to the point where you have the AI on the camera being able to do things like image stabilization and things like that. That's going to happen. If you look at how, say, the Osmo Action works, the iPhone works, how much you can handhold that, without any gimbal, things like that. The GoPros, this is going to get to the point where you start to have that in camera. I think the future probably is more that side of it than IBIS, to be honest. You may have a mix of both, I think, but it would be probably great to get rid of IBIS if you could, because there's less moving things in the camera, and then there's less things that can go wrong. I think that's probably, the future is probably going to be more with AI doing things like your amazing IBIS that you're going to be able to handhold with video. You won't need to use gimbals anymore. I mean, the AI is going to be pretty incredible. It'll certainly give you multiple exposures on the fly and then choose the best image for you. Things like that are going to be done that will be incredible. Like I said, using like what they're talking about there about bokeh, having defocusing areas, having focus afterwards. All these sort of things could be possible with using AI that will be coming up in future Sony cameras. And we probably will get that first due to the fact that, Sony makes those sensors. I think it will. I think that it will miss the 35 1.4 for Tamron. Sigma 1.2 is beautiful, but too big for weddings. I have the Samyang and think the 35 1.8 for Sony. Which one would you have, David? Are you talking about the Sigma or the Samyang? Well, after looking at Michael's, who showed me that when I went to the US and I used it, the Sigma is stunning. The 35 1.8, it's too big for me though. It would certainly be too big for me to lug around with weddings. I mean, I do use that with the 35. Well, I wouldn't get either, to be honest, because I'd just get the Sony 24 GM. I mean, that's what I now shoot with. I used to have the 35 Sony 1.8, 2.8 I mean, and I sold it. If I was going to do that now, I probably would buy the Sigma though if I was going to get any of those lenses, because it is such a stunning lens, and I'd put up with that weight for the amount of time that I got it out. But I don't use the 35 focal length anymore. I use the 24 GM. So I would just stick with that. So I'm not in the market for a 35. If Tamron brought out the 35 1.4 though, that was a lovely lens to use. It wasn't too heavy, beautifully made. Results were incredible. I may buy that to keep as a 35. John said, you mean the a7 R4? Oh, okay. Bill said, Camera Warehouse in Australia is listing the R5 at $10,499. That is $6,700. I hope it's not that price, Bill, because if it is, it's ridiculous. It just won't sell. Let's just see what it is. I wonder where the Everything Man got that price of $6,000, because that was on a US, on an Australian side as well. Those dollar figures at this stage, though, just may be called out of the blue because Canon haven't announced any planning at all. So that just could be a guess. What about Sony medium format? Do you think it will come one day? Not sure if Sony want to get into that market, to be honest. I just don't think that they need to. I just don't know how much of a market there'd be for it. That's the problem. Look, when you're dealing with the a7R4, you're almost up to medium format sort of resolution and everything anyway. I used to shoot with medium format when I was in fashion years ago, and look, they are incredible if you're dealing with things like detail and stuff, but I just don't know if the difference is there enough anymore to justify the cost for most users. And I just don't think it will sell enough. What are the sales on the Fuji? I'd love to know. I mean, are they good? Are they bad? I just don't know because I don't follow the sales on Fuji. It'd be interesting to see how the sales are on their Fuji full medium format camera. I don't know if Sony would want to get into it. They're making money on the sensors anyway. I mean, let's face it, at the moment, they can't bring out a7 series cameras. Do you really think that they would be producing a medium format camera? Gerald said the new Sigma lenses update same as Tamron through the lens. No need to dock unless you have old lenses. Oh, okay. I didn't know that, so thanks for sharing that, Gerald. What else have we got? Don't believe any vendor listing a price for the camera and hasn't even been officially released. That's exactly right, John. You can't trust that yet. They wouldn't know. What else have we got? Aaron says he's not buying nothing. I'm the same, Aaron. There's no way I'm going to be either. I think we're already in a depression, John said. Long Rider said Sony partly owns Tamron and makes sensors for almost everyone, so they get a no matter what you buy. Yeah, they get some money. That's exactly right. Where are we? George said, so much depends on whether we pull out our credit cards when the COVID subsides. Yeah, George, the only thing I can suggest you is be careful. Look, I wouldn't recommend anyone to buy on credit at the moment. I'm just talking from the heart here, George, that it's just not worth doing it at the moment because, yes, everyone loves new gear. I love new gear more than anyone else. But there's no way on earth I'm going to go into finance or credit to buy a camera at the moment or gear like that, because once that novelty wears off with the new gear and then you're stuck with this loan and you can't pay it back potentially because things go bad, it's not worth it because the resale value will tank. It's just something that I say, unless you have the funds to actually purchase it or a real need, I would stay away from purchasing anything that's that expensive. If it's small things, yes, like, you want to go out and buy a gimbal that's not going to cost too much, it might be $400, even that's a lot now, but if it's not too much, it's not too bad and you may have a need for it. Things like that are not so bad. It's more like when you start to get into very expensive things like lenses and cameras, which are thousands of dollars, you may have to justify getting it. Like, do you really need it or could you get by with using what you already have? It's something you just have to be very, very careful about. I like to go into the brick and mortar stores. That's that way I can see how to use the item, how it feels, etc. I can push the buttons and see how I like the ergonomics. Yeah, I get you totally, but I just don't know how that market's going to survive. It's going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen. Consumer jet was already super high before the current crisis. Not sure how much credit will be left after everyone opens. Oreo said, in Italy, Sony Pro support is not purchased. It is granted to people who purchased and registered legally. Oh, that's amazing, Sony. Lucky that you're very lucky, Oreo. Aldrich said, how can I have the Pro support and how much does it cost? You've got to have, well, it depends on the country you live. Obviously, in Italy, you just get it, Oreo's saying. If you're in the US and other areas, you have to have a certain amount of lenses and camera bodies to qualify, and then you usually pay a yearly fee. But it's certainly worth it if you can get into it, that's for sure, because they give you replacements. If your gear can't be fixed within a certain time, you get priority pickup. It's done first before anyone else, and you get it back very quickly. I love it. It's such a great service. Gerald said, even with the COVID-19 and economic troubles worldwide, the best thing for Sony's bottom line for cameras is a better video hybrid camera to create some new buzz around the brand. John said, it's a shame about B&H. I almost live there. Adorama is in a similar boat. I did just buy a tripod from Adorama, very satisfied. John said, online from Adorama, that is. Oh, okay. Aaron said, yes, global shutter with digital IBIS. Yep, that probably is the future, Aaron. Mick said, pre-ordered the 7180 with a deposit, now eagerly awaiting for my shipments. You're going to love it, Mick. It's such a great lens. Guy with the camera said that the FX9 has internal gyro, which could help with shake, similar to the GoPro. Interesting. What else? Gerald said, oh no, where was it? I read that. Gerald said they already posted an article. Sony has medium format sensors and medium format lenses patent now. Says the camera is coming. I just don't know if there'd be a market for it though, but who knows? I mean, you've got to be careful in this marketplace to stretch things out too far. They should consolidate and make what they've got really good. Like I said, we're still dealing with a monitor that's 5 years old or some ridiculous thing, that Sony need to up their game and fix what they've already got before they start to sort of think about coming out with medium format cameras. A company's only got so much R&D that they can support, and that's the issue, particularly now that things are a lot tougher. So I think that'd be a mistake, but you guys can let me know. You might totally disagree. Tamron announced 3 new lenses for E-mount. What do you predict? Well, they're saying there may be at this stage. I mean, I think, like I said, one will be a longer lens. I'm not sure what that will be at this stage, but I'm predicting a longer lens, and I'm just hoping a wide angle. That's what I'm hoping, and I am still hoping that's the 35 1.4 cherry, but who knows? Aria said there is a pro market for medium format cameras, which is more about prestige than profit, but Sony needs both. If they enter the medium format arena, it'll be because they know they're going to win it. It is interesting, Gerald, but just because it's leaked doesn't mean it will come about, though. That's the thing you've got to understand about that. I mean, how long have we been hearing about the Sony a7S3 coming out? That just may never happen. What about, we also got the leak about the 105 f1.4 lens, never has come out. So, you can't trust those leaks in the fact that they will come out. Do you own the 20mm Sony? No, I don't. I've got the 24, so I'm happy with that. I wouldn't buy the 20 because I already have the 24. If I was to buy another wide-angle lens, it will be something like a 12 or a 14mm lens, something like that. I don't need the 20. Even though that's an amazing lens, and it is an incredible lens, I adore the 24, so I've got no need for it. Did David do a video on his Rodecaster and PodMic? No, I must do that, actually. I must talk about the whole setup that I've got now. I'll have to do a video on that, actually. What's next? The Panasonic SH1 is 4K. The R5 is more camera. Yep. Gonzo said, I hope the a7S3 is up next. 4K 60 10-bit and the, what was the fast again? Oh, the fully articulating screen, yep. I work in a camera store in the United States in Iowa, one of the least affected states, but COVID has really killed a lot of people even wanting to leave the house. Yeah, I know, Doug, and that's the issue. I feel sorry, mate, for you. It's tough. It's tough for all of us, so we're all going through it, I suppose. John said, so true, David. These times force us to think hard about want versus need. And that's the thing you have to understand, John, and also Doug, that it is completely understandable. Like I'm usually buying stuff and I've completely stopped. But I mean, at this stage, as I'm a full-time photographer, well, naturally my stuff has gone completely. But even if I was working full-time now, I would still be debating on whether I would want to purchase much at all, because the issue is that, like I said, I'll be buying little things like lights or whatever that are only going to cost, a small amount of money. But the issue is you don't know what's going to happen. And this is the problem. We may need to bunker down. We just don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months. So if things do potentially go bad, you have to be careful. And this is why I'm saying I wouldn't recommend people to go out and buy things on finance or hire purchase or, whatever. I would try and stick with what you've got and make it work at this stage until things pick up and you've got more confidence in your future, what your finances are going to be in the future. And that's the only thing that I can suggest to you. That's why I won't be buying anything expensive for quite some time. I just don't want those worries. I do not want those worries, at all. Where were we? It's down here, yep. Yeah, I was up to there. Doug said, I tried the Tamron 70-180 today on my a7 III. Pretty nice, lightweight, and you don't have to turn it very far to zoom. No, you don't, Doug. I love that lens. It's amazing. So sharp, great focus, feels great on the camera. It was fantastic. Maven said, all camera companies file patents for items that never see the light of day. For Astro, which lens on an a7 III, which lens would you recommend? The Tokina 20mm, I haven't used that, so I can't tell. I haven't used either of those. So someone may be able to say in the chat. I have used the 24GM, though, and it was good. It's more my technique that let me down. I just don't do star shots enough. But I think the 24GM is an amazing lens. The Sony 20mm would also be an incredible lens. I haven't used those two, so someone may be able to let us know in the chat if they have. What else have we got? I love it. Mark said, cold ears, David. No, I was doing a video this morning, Mark. I'm reviewing some small rig stuff. And I was using this to do the video. It was already there, and I thought I'd just put it on. Actually, it's fantastic. Like, the sound quality is so much better than when I'm listening through the little headphones. So I thought I'd just leave them on today. It is funny, though, that you're saying that, though. Oreo said, if Tamron shall make a small 85 2.8 lens, I'll buy it for weddings. Either that or a small 100 3.5. I would also buy a small 200 f4. Oh, thanks for sharing, Oreo. I also made you a moderator, Oreo. I know you said that you weren't one, so now you are. What else? Jim said, Doug, Jeff, I know he's talking to each other. Oops, where were we? Samyang a7iV makes an 85 2.8 dead on arrival. Yeah, the Samyang a7iV does look pretty good from what I've seen. I know Gilbert wants to get that lens, I think, because he loves his Samyang lenses. It'd be interesting. I don't know whether we need another 85, but who knows? But then, like I said, everyone loves other things like that interests Oreo. So there probably is other people that would love that. Wow, do you think the Sony 12 to 16mm 2.8 is a possibility? Yeah, the G Master, yes, for sure. Yeah, I do. I definitely think that is a possibility. It's still, the thing is too, I don't know whether that still will be as good as the 24GM, and that's what you've got to make a decision on, Nash. That 24GM is unbelievable. And the 12 to 16, it's 12 to 16, okay. Yeah, probably, yeah, I do think that could be a possibility. But I still want a prime though. Like, for what I want a 12mm prime. I want Sony to bring out not a zoom lens, I want a prime. But it is a possibility, yes, that we could get it. I would get the 24 though if you're waiting, because who knows how long that would be, and the 24GM is unbelievable. Hector said, what's up, Dave? I own the 24G Master Sony, so it is. It's an amazing lens. That it is incredible. Audrey said, I got the Sigma 14 to 24mm, and it's a beautiful lens and relatively small. Yep, that's another great lens. I used to have the 14 to 24 on the Nikon days. I loved it. Aaron said, yeah, I get it, Gerald, but the pandemic screwed things up, and they're talking to each other. Colin said, weddings are coming back online in Cairns. I got a wedding quote this morning, and I had one yesterday, so perhaps things are just starting to pick up again, Colin. So, yeah, we may be the same as you. So hopefully soon things... I mean, I've put the quote out. It doesn't mean I'm going to get them, but at least quotes seem to be starting to come out. There's one way of looking at this. All the weddings that have been postponed, like I've had stacks. I mean, that was my major wedding period, sort of March, April. May is my main wedding season, so all of those went, and then I get the occasional weddings through winter. But if all of those weddings have been cancelled for everyone, and now they're rescheduling till later in the year, there's going to be a lot of photographers that are going to be booked out. So potentially there is a chance that we could get a big backlog of work that people are now saying they're coming out, they're allowed to get married, allowed to have people in. At the moment, we're only allowed 10 people per wedding. But next month it'll probably be more, and then the following month it'll be more. The weddings that I've got coming back are in October. And by then, I'm hoping everything is probably right from that point on. So I may get a few weddings at the end of the year now extra because people have been already booked up and they can't get the photographer that they were with previously, or people have put off getting married until this is sorted out. So there could be a bonus for all of us. What else? Hate the way that jumps. Samyang 14mm for Astro is, he loves it for Astro. He loves it on the A7 II. Thanks for sharing that, Bill. Oreo said, I used to shoot film with the Contax 85 2.8. That fit my pocket and was fantastic quality. I really appreciate the lightweight and small for weddings. Yep. Know exactly how you feel, Oreo. That's why I love the Tamron stuff. It's just so small and light. I have two a7IIIs and want to buy an a7R3. I was really surprised by the loss of stability on the a7R3. Well, that's interesting. Are you talking about stability or sensibility? If it's stability, well, that is resolution. Remember, as soon as you go up in resolution, Ultric, if that's what you're talking about, you do have to be more careful with your technique. The A7R4 is even worse. I mean, if you don't have good technique and use a decent shutter speed on high megapixel cameras, you do have definitely the potential to have softer images. It's one big advantage with using something like the A7 III or the A9. You don't have to be as critical with your technique and also your shutter speed as you do, say, with an A7R3 or an A7R4. Larger megapixels definitely can give you a compromise if you're dealing with sharpness if you don't have good technique. That's for sure. The 24GM I tried wasn't sharp. Wow, focus pole. That's weird, Triple. I've never had anyone say that at all. Michael said, love your show. I'd love to know what your streaming setup is, camera, OBS settings, etc. I don't use OBS. I use Wirecast, Michael. I will do a video about this, what my whole setup is. Doug said 2 cities on the Illinois side, is it? And 2 cities on the Iowa side make the quad cities. I live in Davenport. Oh, so you live in Davenport, do you? Mark said, yep, Sony has to close the gaps in primes. See, really the only area that they're sort of missing in is a few of them. Like I said, a 105, 1.4 lens would be terrific. A wide angle lens would be terrific. They definitely need to update some of their lenses as well. Like I said, like the 85 1.4 has to be updated. Bruce said, I shoot a lot of portraits with my 85 1.4. I've heard a lot of positive reviews on the Sony 135. Yep, it's amazing, Bruce. Best lens I've ever had. Does it make sense to get both these lenses? No, it does. Yeah. I mean, I use them all the time. The problem is you can't use the 135 indoors for a lot of cases. It's just too long. You have to be back too far. You can use it if you're dealing with head and shoulders, but if you want to go anything further than that, you need to be in a hall. You have to be that far back from your subject. So the way I work is anything close indoors or usually indoors, I'm just using my 85. Then the second I go outside, I use my 135. So that's how I work. But yes, you definitely could do with both. Aaron J. Anderson said, and David Olsen, no sync issues tonight with Aaron's audio. I love it. Casper saying hello again. He's back. Good day, Casper. 0007 said, Sony somehow covered up the 24mm focus pulse issue even though there are multiple reports. Well, I've never heard about that at all, so I don't know where you're getting that from. Roland said, what's the best Sony mirrorless camera for live seminar events? Probably the a7 III, I would say. Or you can even go the a6-400 if you wanted to go that way, the a6-600. If it's going to be on a tripod, if you haven't got much money, I'd go for the a6-400 because you don't need the stabilization in the lens, or you could still buy that and buy a gimbal for cheaper than you can get the a6-600. So I would think if you're dealing with live seminar and events, the a6-400 or the a7 III. Hector said, did you see the Petapixel article today about Sony? No, what was that about, Hector? Let me just bring up Petapixel and just see. New window. Let me just see if I can find it. Which story was it? Just trying to see if I can find where there was a... Oh, you're talking about the sensor one? Yeah, well, I've sort of discussed that as well. This was the article that I was talking about a little bit earlier, where they're dealing with AI built on the sensor. It's on Petapixel. I mean, what they're saying in here anyway is it's going to be for industrial usage. It's not going to be for photographic usage. That's why I didn't want to discuss it today, because I didn't think it was really that relevant for what we're talking about. But they are talking about 12.3 megapixels and 4K 60 frames per second video capabilities. But that's why I never mentioned that here today. What else? Nivac said a 24 GM that isn't sharp is probably a bad copy. Yep, exactly. I've never heard of that. So, Gerald said, I am the opposite. I prefer to move back and use the better 135 GM. Yeah, but often you can't do that, Jared, though. Like if you're in wedding situations, you just haven't got the room to do it. The 135 is too big. You've just got to go back too far. So I use the 85 for most of the times when I'm doing weddings, particularly indoors. And I said too, he prefers to go wider. I do too now. I'm often using the 24 for shots for weddings and stuff. I still like my 55. I like to use that too. So bottom line is, no matter what Sony release, none of us will be rushing out to buy it. Probably, Colin, because not many of us are going to have the money, that's for sure. Guy with the camera said, Gerald, I'm the same. When I can use a 135, I do it. Otherwise, I drop to 85. Yep. I mean, you've got like I said, you've got no option. Most wedding venues that you deal with, like brides getting ready and things like that, you can't use a 135. It's just too long. Julian said, my 24 GM is my sharpest lens. Yeah, I don't know where they were talking about that lens's problems. I just haven't heard of that. The problem is you go into a lot of forums and they're people that are whinging about problems, but that might be 1% of the whole population of people that are using that lens. So to say when you go into chats and you say, yeah, but it's going off on this chat, that's because it's only people in there that have problems that are posting in there. 99% of the people probably aren't having problems. You've probably got 1% of people that are having problems, are the biggest whingers in those sites, and then everyone believes them. Don't believe what you read in these sort of so-called tech groups, because they're there for people that have got problems and stuff and trying to solve it. It's not the general opinion about what's happening with that gear at all. And that's about it. All right, so guys, that's about it. We're down near the end. That's right, David, about chats and problems. Yeah, it's just, like I said, it's just full of people that are having issues. 99% of people, look at the people in this group, everyone's saying the 24 is amazing. So, it's if you Google it, it probably comes up to one of those chat sites that are saying there's issues. Well, like I said, I've never heard that at all. And I can't believe how good my lens is. And everyone else is saying the same thing. Sharpest lens they've got. Everyone in this chat, apart from U007, is saying it's bad. Well, that should tell you something, that it is, like I said, it's a small minority that are having problems, and that's the issue. So that's about it, guys. So stay tuned. I have got some videos coming up. I've got some great small rig stuff that I'm going to show you in the next. Probably maybe today or early tomorrow, I'll be posting some small rig stuff that I've got, which is amazing. And it's to sort of deal, I've got a little tripod and also an iPhone mount that you're going to love. It is unbelievable, and it's not expensive. It's really quite cheap. So stay tuned for that coming up as well. So thank you so much, Hector, for the donation. Really appreciate that. So stay tuned for that. Don't forget to, next week with Aaron, we'll be live again. So stay tuned for that as well. And we'll have multiple videos coming out during the week. I've still got stacks I've got to review, so stay tuned for that. I have got a new release coming out that I can't talk about. It's not an expensive device. It's actually really quite reasonable, but that will be coming out. I think it's announced on the 19th. So stay tuned for that as well. I'll have a little video review of that coming out as well. Apart from that, everyone, we'll see you in the next video. Have a great day, everyone. Great weekend. And I'll catch you in the next video. Please give us a thumbs up if you can, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Apart from that, everyone, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now.